The game of chess originated in Europe. Nice. It began around in like the 10th century. You could still come around under like the 12th century, which is interesting. In medieval times, the chessboard had many colors like red, blue, yellow, like a lot. And chess tournaments were also held. There's, oh my god. So,
my name is Aiken. Archers were important, and I'm going to be talking about archery. Archers were important to the Middle Ages and served a crucial role during both defense and attack. They were used in the front lines and battlefields to initiate attacks, breaking through enemy lines with a wall of arrows. They also protected castles and nobility using their bow and arrows as a defense against the enemy. Archers trained young and were actually ordered by a law made in 1252 that they began training at 15 years old. Everyone from ages 15 to 60 was proficient in the art of archery. Archers usually have longbows, straight curved bows, and crossbows.
Hi, my name is Michael, and I'll be talking about what jesters do. A jester is an entertaining person who would be around the king's court to entertain people, not get punished by the king. They also juggled, did stunts, and told jokes around town. Jesters wore a kind of clothing called motley, coat of many colors. They usually had hats that were big and pointy. And a really known jester was Mothrin Muffle. Sometimes jesters were born in the role of being a jester. Sometimes, if jesters weren't good at being a jester, they wouldn't be fit for the king.
My name is Bailey. I'm going to talk about jousting. Jousting is a medieval and Renaissance martial game between two people, either on horse or on foot. The staff used was called a lance. The lance weighed 5 to 7 pounds. Jousting without a horse is called quick. A jousting match is called a tournament. Horses usually get up to 30 miles per hour. Knights were the ones who did the joust. The battle took place on a large field. There were even stands built where the local nobles could sit to watch. Jousting was the highlight of many events. Jousting on horse started in the military. It changed into a specialized sport during the late Middle Ages. It remained popular with nobility. I made a shield and a lance. The part where you held it on the lance is called the stock. The part where it protects your hand is called the balancing point. And the tip of the lance is called a point. The shield, it's just a shield.
I made a bow. It can shoot, but I'm not gonna shoot it. And the arrow is made out of this too. And I made the whole bow out of popsicle sticks and rubber bands for the top part and bottom part.
I made a scepter. It's to show people that you know how to be a jester and to cause authority.
I just bought the old-fashioned pieces. Because just, it just is really interesting. So, yeah.
Good job.
Welcome to our presentation. We will be talking about knights.
White helmets and leg guards and clothing underneath called chainmail. A knight's duty was to fight and protect people who could not defend themselves. What did a knight wear? A knight typically wore iron and armor on their chest.
Edward the Black Prince lived 1330 to 1376. Elcid lived 1043 to 1099. Elcid was famous for capturing the kingdom city Valencia from the Moors, and Edward was famous for his victories to the English.
Knights attended a ceremony for swearing the oath. The oath is a set of rules a knight would follow until the end of his time. This was a very important oath. Knights were expected to behave a certain way. This was called the Code of Chivalry. Here are some of the main codes which knights tried to live by. 1. To follow the church and defend it with his life. 2. To protect women and the weak. 3. To serve and defend the king. 4. To be generous and honest. 5. To never lie. 6. To live by honor and for glory. 7. To help widows and orphans. Becoming a knight took lots of training. Young noblemen started training as young as 7 years old. They were trained with weapons and in horse riding. In their free time, knights hunted, practiced falconry, jousting, martial skills, attended tournaments, played chess, participated in courtly entertainment like music and dancing. Sometimes they even composed poetry. The knights were part of the Crusades, religious war. It was thought to be honorable to join the Crusades. During the Crusades, knights defended the Crusaders and Christians. Knights were expected to be brave, loyal, and honorable warriors who fought to defend the church and Crusaders.
The knight's armor cost 36 to 40 shillings. Men could be a knight if they were men of noble birth. They served the military or they showed exceptional bravery. Thank you and goodbye. So I made a battle axe with some pixel rolls and 2 paper plates. And my dad carved these wooden ones.
I made a cardboard shield. I painted the dragon and the outside. And Jackson's dad made this axe.
I made whatever this is called, scroll.
Good job.
Hi, my name is Grant. This is weapons. Cannons were developed for siege and field battles. My dad collects cannons. He loves them. Cannons were capable of firing projectile. The cast iron bombs full of gunpowder. The crossbows were the most feared weapons. It was a powerful long-range weapon. They were easier to fire to use than a regular bow. The best weapon was the spear. It was a prized weapon in warfare, and they were used by thrusting into the enemy.
The blacksmiths were responsible for making weapons. To make the weapons, they heated an iron in a forge until it was able to be molded. After they shaped the weapon, an anvil and hammer. They sharpened it on a spinning wheel made of stone. Forging was the most common method used to make weapons. Some of the best weapons in medieval times are spear, spike, and lance. The lance was mainly used in jousting. Spikes and spears were used in wars and attacks. Swords were also popular medieval weapons. Swords were made of iron and made by a blacksmith. Axes were also used. Medieval axes were called battle axes. The pike was the longest and heaviest weapon. It was mainly used by soldiers.
Ballistas were a powerful siege weapon used to throw bolts or stones at a distance. They were considered a missile machine. Mangonels were another form of catapult. It was a very large piece of equipment used to throw large stones at castle walls. Unlike the mangonel, the trebuchet had a rotating arm that swung objects into enemy lines, walls, or fields. Catapults were used to launch projectiles. Trebuchets were a type of catapult. They were popular for castle attacks. They were used for destroying enemy fortifications. There were feared weapons and brutal weapons. Some of the most feared weapons included axes and swords. Another feared weapon was the Morning Star. The five most brutal weapons consisted of boiling oil, the war scythe, Leander mace, and the war elephant. War elephants were used in ancient and medieval warfare to charge enemies, break ranks, and instill fear.
I made this cannon, it fires, and my dad let me bring this cannon in, and no, it does not fire.
This is an axe, and it was carved. We did not buy it, and it was made by my cousin Braden for his medieval fair.
I made a morning star out of cardboard.
Good job.
Hi, my name is Eva, and today we are doing nobility fashion. Nobles hold scientific power. They control a lot of land and provide military service to the king and royal family. Nobility in medieval times were considered upper class. Noble people wore long dresses and skirts. They also wore nightgowns with additional layers and long scarves. They would also wear shirt curtain handles for bells. Cords and sashes were worn as belts. On the head, they used pins in their hair.
Hi, my name is Paige. Today I'm going to be talking about what noble women and noble men did. Noble people got to learn. The more money you had, the better education you received. They learned things like chivalry, basic skills, Latin, how to ride fire, a bow, or manage their own castle. They learned at monasteries or someone coming to their house. Boys started military training at age 6, and they were sent to a neighboring castle to become a page. Girls were taught handicrafts and dancing. Some noblemen devoted themselves to the church. They were called bishops. They ruled sections of land and lived much like other noblemen.
Hi, my name is Ellie, and I'm going to be telling you a little bit about the colors that they wore during medieval times. Nobles liked to wear bright colors that were made of expensive dyes, whereas the common folk wore more of a dull color palette. Some of the popular colors noble wore were red, green, and or blue. Some of the colors signify certain meanings. Red stands for power, wealth, love, and sometimes charity. Blue is purity and devotion. Purple means royalty and power. White stands for holiness and purity. Yellow is dignity, but also could represent faith or confidence.
Some of the famous kings and queens were Henry VIII, Cleopatra, Queen Elizabeth, Catherine the Great, and Queen Azinga. The role of the noblewoman was caring for the children, overseeing staff, attending religious services, supporting the arts and preserving culture, overseeing their households and estates while their husbands were away, social events, and horseback riding. The king, lord, knight, or lady of the house often ran the noble people's estate, overseeing the staff and management of property and gardens. The noblemen were in charge of managing their lands and peasants, collecting and funding for military expeditions and war strategy, hunting and hawking, and business management.
Here's what a noblewoman headpiece would look like.
A crown that a nobleman would wear. And here's some of the ringlets that the little girls get. And the boys get crowns. And here's a perfume bottle that they wore.
Good job.
Around the castle walls were moats, barbicans, curtain walls, and towers. Castle walls were built for protection, strategic locations, defending nobility and treasures, safe haven for villages, and demonstrating wealth and power. Castles were used defensively by providing protection with walls, towers, moats, extra space, and offensively as a base for launching raids and gathering troops and supplies. Some kings decorated their crowns with gold and gems, while others used animal accessories to make them unique.
The circular defense wall of stone castle goes up to 2 meters deep. How much is 2 meters? 6½ feet. Early medieval castles in England were mainly constructed by the Normans. To serve life, the entire family will rise at dawn, they eat bread crust, and they work on their lord's lands. 4. They help plant and harvest crops and tend to the livestock. Some famous castles in the medieval times are still around today. The Conway Castle, the Bran Castle, and the Ellis Castle.
Hi, my name's Ellie, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about castle features. Some other famous medieval castles are the Edinburgh and the Windsor. Windsor is home of the Queen and King of England, the late Queen Elizabeth II and late King Philip. Edinburgh is one of the oldest fortified places in Europe. Castle doors were heavy vertically closing gates, which helped keep people out. That meant they went up and down. Some castle features are thick walls, moats, drawbridges, and arrow slits for archers. The inner part of the castle contains the strongest tower and most important living quarters. The outer part is the defense area, providing extra protection.
My name is Peggy, and I'm going to tell you about how castles are built. Castles were built with secret entrances to help people escape from any enemy. The walls were called curtain walls. Castles were built to be able to hold off enemies and also had outer walls for soldiers to keep watch. Castles were built on hills or near water to keep enemies from attacking. They also had moats to make it harder for the enemy to cross over and attack. Rooms in the medieval castles were cold. Tapestries were often used as wall hangings and as curtains to help keep out drafts.
Hi, I'm Leah. In castles, it was busy and noisy and smelly, with lots of people and servants working and fighting. Castles were often built with rough areas in the wall to make it harder for attackers to climb. The cost of the building and maintaining the castles amounted to around 40% of the kingdom's revenue. The castle great room was where people came to sit and relax and spend time together. Women would sit doing their sewing. Men would play games or rest and talk. Entertainments were also held in the great room too.
We made a castle.
Good job.